back to another edition of Quarantined Coaches. This time we are with Justin Dedman at Miami University, also known as Miami of Ohio, correct?
That's it. Love and honor.
Why do some people call it Miami of Ohio and some people call it Miami University? Because Miami University is the correct name of the school.
That's right. Obviously, there's the University of Miami in Florida, which, better known in athletic circles as the U. And we were actually a university before Florida was a state. They sell T-shirts in the bookstore that'll tell you that. But yeah, it's Miami University is that's the name of the school, and Miami, Ohio, obviously gives it a pretty easy ring for people to know exactly who you are.
You have been pretty much at every level of the college game, correct?
Yes, coached and played Division III baseball. I was an assistant and a head coach at the Division III level, and was a Division I volunteer, and then director of operations, and then coached NAI baseball for 4 years, and then we were Division II for 3, and then came back to the Division I level.
I think there's a great misunderstanding among high school kids growing up looking at schools as to what do the different levels have to offer. And of course, everything is, I want to play D1, I want to play D1. What's something that kids and families need to understand or learn about all the different levels?
Well, obviously, there's great talent at each of the levels. I think at least coaches are very aware of that. There's high-end talent, in the draft and NAI, and there's high-end talent from Division I, II, and III. I think it's the depth of the talent and the depth of the resources that are really, when you think about Division I, that make it kind of the known elite organization to play for. It's really about depth, I think.
Does it matter if a kid plays at an NAIA or a D3 or a D2 or D1 when it comes to having that chance to play past college?
From a talent and opportunity standpoint, generally no. In terms of giving yourself the most opportunities for it to happen, yes, I think it does. I played Division III baseball, and we had one professional player on our team in an 8-year window. When I was there as a coach and a player, we had 3. And the best in the country in junior college might have, 8 or 10. So, if you're at a junior college, it's really good, and you haven't been a prospect yet, you've got a better shot of getting picked up because you're around a lot of prospects. And those scouts come to see the big arm or the toolsy center fielder who can really hit, and they end up watching you on accident. I think that there are all sorts of stories. Steve Springer, the mental game coach, he got watched because the scout was coming to watch another future all-star that, they happened to see Steve Springer, and Springer went 4 for 4 that day and caught his eye. And I think that's how it happens for a lot of players. They get your name, you get on a list, they see your tools and your talent. But a lot of kids get seen because they're coming to watch other people.
When we talk about finding a school, we often hear about find the right fit. Don't necessarily worry too much about that level of play because that level of play doesn't have to do with what the right fit is. So help me understand that term. What does it mean to be, find the right fit?
Yeah, I think you have to know what is important to you in your process. And you have to know by figuring out from your team and your league and your coaching staff, getting feedback on how good you are. So there's the athletic, obviously, part that weeds itself out and figuring out where you fit in terms of ability and skill. And then there's the part of what am I looking for? What's important to me academically? What size of school am I looking for? What type of a coaching staff is important to me? And, how close or far away from home do I want to be? All those types of things that are important. And hopefully you can mesh the two of those together.
So I think one of the biggest problems for recruits is being honest with themselves sometimes about where they fit from the athletic side of things. We all want to play for the New York Yankees, right? And one day we can, but that's not realistic. So for a young guy, how can they find where they fit athletically? And just really learn how to be realistic about their target schools?
Well, certainly it's in some ways easier than it used to be with recruiting or rating services that are going to, try and put you into a category or rate your skills and your tools. And there's value in that. But ultimately, if you're getting attention from a lot of schools, you're a pretty good player. If you're not getting attention from any schools, you either aren't a very good player, you're probably not in a very good organization that the other people come to watch. So I think players that are really good often end up, especially nowadays with travel ball, end up in better organizations because they change organizations or they were recruited by that organization and they want to play where they have this really big room for error of being seen by college coaches. And I think that's important. There are diamonds in the rough still. There are kids that play in really small organizations or schools. But more often than not, all the coaches are going to the same places to watch some of the same players. And so probably 80% of the recruiting that happens out there is watching the same teams at the same complexes.
Right. You kind of explained it towards the end of that question, but I wanted you to expand on that because it is a question that a lot of, parents have as to what travel team should I play for, or should I transfer high schools to be on this team? Really, how important is that? Like, isn't it kind of the case where, hey, if I'm really good and I reach out to you, that you're going to come see me? Or is it kind of like what you were talking about earlier with the levels of college, put yourself around better players and give yourself a better chance?
I think both of those can be very important. And, some kids and families are just going to choose one or the other based upon what they want, what's important to them. So, some kids want to stay in an environment that's close to home, that doesn't travel to bigger places, and they're comfortable with being seen if they get seen, or just trying to go to a PBR, a perfect game event. And I think if that's what is something that's comfortable for them and having their process go that way, that's okay. It can make it harder for them to be seen. Everybody's got a chance to do the process their own way. And I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do it, but you do have to understand that if you're not going to events where a lot of coaches are going to be, it's going to be tougher for you to be seen.
Right. So that would be one of my next questions is, how do you identify what a good travel organization looks like?
That's a great question. I'm not sure that I have the perfect answer there, Josh. Ultimately, you want to be around as many good players as you can be. I think you want to be around coaches, most importantly, that are really good. If I'm a player, I want to be around coaches that are going to develop me. I think that there is a lot of trying to be in organizations that play in the biggest tournaments and have the nicest jerseys and travel in buses and all those things. And part of it is because those programs are really good and they play at a high level and they win. And so they cost more money. And so they have nicer things and they get more exposure. They have more people working full time for them to ultimately get where they want to go. So, in some cases, probably the more that you pay or the bigger of a atmosphere you go into, some of those things are the more you're going to get. I don't necessarily think that means that it's the better coaching that you're going to get. I think that there are great coaches in a lot of different types of organizations. And, some people are really focused on getting one thing and some people are more focused on just getting the better coaching or finding the right people regardless of the bus or the logo.
Don't you see some organizations, though, that have a lot of money? It might be because they're extremely watered down. Their top two teams, their top three teams are legit, but then everything after that is a real struggle. And it might not be the best situation for players to be in that organization if they're on teams like 3 through 10. Like, let me give you an example. I remember last summer I was talking to a college coach, and he asked about a player. I said, "Oh, who's with this program?" And he said, "What team is he on?"
Yeah.
And then I told him, and he goes, "Oh, that's not their good team." When in all actuality, like, this kid, should have been a good recruit for him, I thought.
Yeah. Yes, that definitely happens. I can think of a couple organizations that most of us have seen play, that when we go to watch them, we get the roster for the event that we're at and we open it up And all right, number 14, he's hitting, woo, great swing, really ran well, plays with good energy. I like this kid. Let me look at number 14. All right, 6'8", 240 pounds. That wasn't the kid I liked. That right-handed, they got the rosters wrong. It's not even the right team. The kid's playing for some other team inside the organization. Those things are very common nowadays. And I think ultimately that's our job as coaches to sift through. Everybody wants things to be as easy and simple and clean as possible, whether you're a coach or a player. From the player side of things of choosing, yes. Yeah, I think that there are a lot of organizations that, or at least a few, that could take advantage of their name being exciting and bringing on a ton of kids to pay or travel in for tournaments and those types of things. And they're part of that name, they're part of that brand, and maybe that wasn't what was best for them. And maybe it was. It's tough for me to judge. I think each family has to make that decision. But
do you as a coach see one of those programs that has 8 to 10 teams entered in a tournament? And do you as a coach immediately say to yourself, okay, these are the only 2 teams that I should make an effort to go see?
Well, that's a great.
You can't see everybody, right? And you're not going to go watch their entire, you know what I mean? Like, don't they water it down to a certain point? And what kind of effect, honestly, does that have on you when it comes to seeing maybe who's on their 3rd team or their 4th team?
Yeah, I think the question is really good. And how we treat it is, I'm going to communicate with the coaches for those teams. And I'm going to, before we ever go, we're going to ask the coaches, hopefully, doesn't always happen this way, but who are the players that we should be really looking at? These are the positions inside of this class that are important to us. And, where do those players exist inside of your 8 teams? If you have one roster, it's easier. And that coach might not know all of those 8 teams, but hopefully you're talking with a coach that you have a good relationship with. You try to create those where, at Miami, we're not in the Big Ten, we're not in the SEC, but we do feel like we have a very good baseball team and a very good product and a great culture. And we've got a ton of great players inside of our program that have chosen us at Miami over bigger logos or names. So what we're looking for doesn't have to be everybody. We're looking for coaches, not only players, but coaches who are willing to communicate honestly, not say, I think this guy's a Power 5 guy. Well, this guy's for you. That's not his job to assess, just like it's not my job to judge, whether him having a great bus for his organization is good.
I've heard that from a bunch of college coaches. Is like one of the worst things you could tell a college coach is, oh, this guy would be a great fit for you.
Yeah.
As if we know what fits for you, right?
Right. And this is probably the small school guy inside of me, but I also don't want somebody to tell me this guy's a definite D1 guy. Because what does that mean? There's not one level of Division I baseball. There's a lot of different levels of talent and depth, and every program has different needs. There's different resources. So Division I baseball is not just one singular entity in reality. And every organization has got to be really good at knowing who they are and what they want and communicating that to coaches. And we're not expecting perfect communication from all coaches, but we are going to communicate most often with the coaches who are just going to be honest with us and open to their kids going to the right fit and to the best people.
You mentioned a couple of things there, take us down a little bit of a different road than I planned here, but the travel coaches, right? What can they do maybe better to help you out, which in turn helps their players out? Like, for example, one of the things you mentioned is you open up a book and maybe there's not the right numbers or the names of the kids on the roster sheet. Is that like the worst thing a travel coach could do to you?
Well, I don't know if it's the worst thing. Probably have to think a little bit harder about that, but it's definitely not one of the recruiting coordinator's favorite things. Coaches aren't big fans of that. It makes it difficult to not only to identify the players you're looking for, but when something so simple as the roster is incorrect, you're going to have a really challenging time in believing that what you're going to get from information from a coach is going to be accurate or trustworthy, because that's something so basic is to get your roster right, even if it's just for that tournament. And I know their rosters change frequently, but that's one of the most important things they do for their kids is helping coaches know who their players are, where they're from, if they're committed or not. So I love when coaches have a new roster printed to hand out to you that they printed out in the hotel that's different than the one in the booklet or the booklet, and it says committed. Because I don't want to call any kids who are committed. I don't want to mistakenly call any kids who are committed. I think our word and the way we communicate and the perception of our word and how honest that is and how much integrity it has is extremely important. So we always want to make sure that we're doing things the right way. And I think coaches help players do things the right way, and for coaches to trust the coaches and travel ball by just having the roster right.
If you go to a game just kind of randomly, it's on a field next to you, if there's no roster there, have you ever just walked away and said, well, I'm not going to watch this?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have a roster for the teams and you go to the dugouts and do your due diligence to ask if they have rosters and they don't, yeah, you're going to feel like you're wasting your time, not just in evaluating the players, but in what type of feedback or information or et cetera you're going to get from the players. And our time is, I think in all walks of life, it's our most valuable asset. We all have a lot of time, in some areas right now, but it's something you can't get back. So when you're recruiting and you've got multiple games or pitchers to go to, or you're trying to travel between fields, time is really important, and it will make you, get up and go or leave games early.
You talk about pitchers there. It's a tough balance, right? Because you talk about some of these big programs that are known for winning, and they put their kids in the right places. And so winning is important, right? Obviously. But then at the same time, like, what is the purpose of the summer circuit? It's to help these kids get in front of you guys. So pitchers, you go and you're supposed to see a pitcher and that coach says he's going to throw innings 3 and 4. What happens when he doesn't stick to that? How much could that hurt the kid?
Well, if we're paying attention, we're locked in and we're only watching that game, because sometimes we're on the phone, we're talking with other recruits, we're talking with coaches, we're talking with our staff while we're watching games. But if we're very locked in, we're just watching that game, and you don't see the pitcher who you wanted to see go down to warm up in the bullpen, I think most coaches are going to go ask the dugout, hey, is this guy still on time to pitch? Is he still throwing at this time? And then you take the feedback or the information, and you have to make some quick decisions based upon what information you get. Is maybe he threw yesterday because they had some emergency, extra inning game, or maybe he's not going to throw till tomorrow because of the bracket play and how they're trying to compete to win a tournament. And those things could be frustrating, but there's a lot of events and a lot of twists and turns inside of a recruiting environment, and you just have to have as many good responses as you can so that you give yourself the chance to see as many good players as possible. And sometimes you don't see kids when you want to.
I bring that up because one of my pieces of advice to families when they're picking which team they should play for is, I think that it's very important for the pitchers to make sure they're playing for one of those teams that tells you when you're going to pitch, sticks to that plan, makes it public on social media, and makes it easy for the coaches to come and see you. Like, I know programs that it doesn't matter if it is, a pool tiebreaker game. If they said that this kid's going to be pitching the 5th and 6th inning, that kid's pitching the 5th and 6th inning. And I just think it's really important for families to find those types of situations and do their research, because that obviously helps you a ton and gives them the best chance to be seen by you, no?
Yeah, and I think generally speaking, what I'm hearing is that, you want to set up your kids, or you want to set up families with organizations that are really good at communicating and are highly organized. And I think generally speaking, that's what most programs in college are doing extremely well. And a lot of travel organizations don't have people who are fully committed to doing that. One of the best organizations in this region, I know their coach, who's a really good baseball coach, has a full-time job outside of that travel organization, and is still really good at communicating and really good at, talking with you about his kids and being honest. And I really respect that guy, because this isn't what he does, to feed his family, but he still does a really good job of it. So, I think you want to put your kids in those environments, but, there's kind of some that give and the take that not everybody, gets to make that a full-time job. So you have to have some respect for that.
Let's jump more to some of the baseball side of things. In talking to you beforehand, I think one place I wanted to go with you was base running, something I haven't talked about a bunch, and it's something that I know you appreciate and the staff there appreciates. Is it a lost art these days, and why?
Well, I think at the college level, it's becoming an ever increasing part of the game that's utilized in scoring a lot of runs and creating a lot of pressure. I think there are more college teams, at least in my lifetime, than ever, that are stealing bases and becoming more aggressive on the base pass. When I first got into coaching, 15 years ago, I don't remember seeing as many teams do it, and those who did really stood out. And I think a lot of that has to do with, somebody like Matt Tallarico and the stealbases.com website and how many people he has invested in and shared with, just like Mike Roberts invested in and shared in him. And, we learned a lot of what we learned from him, and we teach, a lot of the similar old school, new school techniques and just generally aggressive base running. But it's fun to see the college game getting faster and faster. And I think the high school kids who run the bases that aggressively do really stand out.
So how do you evaluate base running? Because the only number that we really see is the 60 time or the home to first time. I'm starting to see some more split times put out there, but that's straight line running. That's not really indicative of, unless you're trying to beat out a ball you just hit back to the pitcher, right?
Yeah.
So how do you evaluate base running?
That's a great question. You got to evaluate during the game. You can figure out straight line speed in a showcase, but you want to see guys play the game. For example, we've got a kid who runs a legit 6'2" on our team, and he runs a 4'2" from the right-hand side, which is really quick, but it's not as quick as you would think a 6'2" runner runs. And then we've got two guys this past year that are 6'6" or 6'5" runners, and both will run a 4.05 from the right-handed box. I mean, they're really good runners. And for those guys, it's not because of effort or anything like that, just the way that they get out of the box. It's the way that their swings allow them, to set their shin angles and get out and run. So there is a difference definitely between the showcase and the game speed. So you got to watch them play the game. But it's ultimately all about pressure and intent and energy. We're looking for high school kids who have athletic bodies and who have the shapes and of the muscles and of the bodies and of the ankles, and that we think are going to project to continue to get more athletic as they gain, muscle mass or as they more mature. But we're looking for kids who play with kind of that green light mentality all day long. So I think it's the energy and the effort that stands out to college coaches initially, and then you start looking at some of the finer details besides just the watch.
So looking at some of those finer details, what would you say are some base running skills, whether mental or physical, that are not being taught maybe at the younger levels that you really have to kind of develop when they get to you? What could high school or travel programs be doing better with teaching base running?
I would say practicing. I think there are organizations that don't practice. And those who do really stick out because their kids are really well coached. When a travel organization cares enough to practice with their kids, they probably are pretty good teachers of the game. They're probably pretty confident what they teach. So when it comes to skills, I think, you have speed and you have skills, but then you have instincts, right? And in base running, I think that's a buzzword, instincts, right? The ability to make quicker decisions. And really, for most kids, it's not innate. I don't think that anybody wakes up and has great base running instincts. I think it's developed through practice. And the kids who have it probably have played or practiced with focus and energy more often. That's the only way you develop any skill. So I think that a college organization has to put their kids in base running environments with times, pressure on them with a clock, and certainly with batted balls and a defense out there so you can make good decisions. And the only way you get better at it also is failing. And I think for high school kids, the biggest advice that I could give to a 17-year-old base runner is don't be afraid to fail. Play fast, play hard, play with energy, and, learn what stupid is so you don't do stupid. But make aggressive mistakes, and you'll make fewer and fewer of them. But the moment that a base runner of any kind, base stealing, going first to third, getting a live read off a bat with one out, the moment that they start thinking passively or with any fear or trying to avoid mistakes, they're a bad base runner. They're going to be very timid and be a lot slower than the kid who plays the other way. So I think generally speaking, that's kind of what happens in our game with pitching and hitting too. But I think anytime we're living with fear, we're in probably a tough spot. So.
Like we are, I guess, today, right? Throughout the whole country
Yeah.
with this virus going on. It's my ADHD there. Sorry about that. So let me go back because my ADD kicked me off there. So let's take the best base runner in high school, okay? As good as they get. When they get to college, what are they going to struggle with most likely, and what's the adjustment they're going to need to make?
Well, if they're a really good base stealer, start there. They probably have abused pitchers and catchers that were not very adept. And the moment that you show yourself to be good at any skill in the college game, college coaches and players are going to plan against that skill. So if you're base stealing, you've got to be able to do it more than one way. If your only tool is to steal from a 12-foot steal start, a normal average size lead, when pitchers have big leg lifts and bad pickoff moves, you're going to struggle when you get to the college game. They do all sorts of other things to combat that. So I think that's where the exciting part of teaching various ways to steal bases has really caught fire, because it's given kids so many tools inside their toolbox and so many weapons for how to get an extra 90 feet. And the really cool part about that is that your entire offense gets better just when you're showing those other tools, because the pitcher now has to pay more attention to you and the hitters get more good pitches to hit.
Interesting. I never had that problem because I ran like a duck, so I didn't have to think that far. But I know there's just way more things that go into it. It's crazy. Do you teach kids to run different ways depending on weather or wind direction, like getting lower or something like that? I've heard things like that. Is that true?
Well, we definitely want our guys to run with the wind if they can, but we usually don't have many choices in that regard.
Okay.
No, I think the only adjustment we make to the weather is usually sliding or diving earlier on turf fields. Our field is a turf field. When it's wet, you're going to slide really far. If you're playing on grass fields like most high school kids are, adjustments that you need to make probably going to come from how much sand you got in the first base box, or how muddy it is, and maybe there's some gamesmanship from the other coach who knows you're fast trying to slow you down or something. But I think, yeah, if you're able to vary your leads and your looks, I think if you're able to vary the ways that you steal with delay steals and stealing from different distances, I think that you can absolutely take an advantage of being better at stealing in inclement weather conditions, where the field might not allow you to get just a great jump from a standstill.
So there's no such thing as getting lower for aerodynamic purposes, huh? When the wind's coming at you.
If there is, we're doing a really poor job of teaching that right now.
I think I sound really stupid right now, probably. What right now, everybody's stuck at home, everybody's trying to improve their game. What are some things maybe that kids can do on their own to improve the base running skills, right? Because we're talking about, it's not necessarily about just straight line speed.
That's a really good question. Simply practicing it, right? Guys, what are guys doing that they're posting online right now? They're posting their hitting videos, their lifting videos, their bullpen videos. And I think that the parts of the game that don't get practiced right now are skill-based, base stealing, simple defensive patterns and movements. I mean, how much are outfielders doing right now? I don't know. They're probably having a tough time getting better at live reads.
Right.
From a base running standpoint during the quarantine, I think what you want to get really good at is having a great start. You also can get really good at moving athletically and having balance throughout your lead and throughout your jump. And I think it's really important to get video of whatever you're doing. So these kids are making videos. They should videotape themselves getting steal starts. They should work on their lead, work on their return, because the better you can return, the more confident you can be in the type of lead and jump you can get. So if they're working on those subtle things and paying attention to the details, they're going to get better at it. And then you got to start asking some good questions, hopefully to the people that you trust with, hey, okay, here's where I'm at. What do you see in this video and how can I get better at it?
Interesting. I, as much video as I do, I never thought of that, taking video of jumps, of steel jumps. So what would a good video look like for a base runner to see jumps?
Well, that's a great question. I think.
I mean, like angle type stuff, right? Like we know
Okay.
pitchers see from the side,
Yeah.
hitter side. Like what kind of angles or what would you want to see in a video for a base runner?
If I was sending it to a coach,
Correct.
yeah, I think that the coach would want to see, face on what your start looks like. If you were doing evaluation of yourself, I think face on, and then also a view from the first base coach's box. Those two views would give you good views of what your start looked like in terms of direction and your initial first step. But a coach is going to look at your athleticism, what your stance looks like. They're going to look at your first start. Some kids have been taught that a quote false step is false, is negative, and that they should just drive off that backside. And they oftentimes will end up with this swinging gait where the left foot goes out inside of the first baseline, and they're very inefficient runners. We're going to be looking for guys that have clean starts, that do in fact turn or pick up their right foot and set a good shin angle so that their right shin gets to an aggressive angle towards second base as quickly as possible. For some kids, that's an innate skill that they've just been good runners. They like to run. They practice running, and so they've gotten good at that. And some guys are really good at setting their angles with their arms as well.
What about sliding? Since I never thought of base running, like would a video of guys sliding show you anything, even if just like athleticism?
It could if it was a really good slide. Yeah, if they had some game video of an awesome, swim move, dive, or something like that, I think we all would be entertained to see that. I think it would have to be a cherry on top of all the other skill sets and the way they play the game for us to be super excited about it and have it impact us actually recruiting them in a different way.
I'm just thinking like, a couple pop-up slides at the end of the video, show yourself getting down to second, pop-up slide, pretend the ball went behind you, take off, like show a little athleticism. How quick are you around the bag? Like that's a video we don't see, but you're getting me thinking now about those kind of things.
Yeah. Well, I'd say the challenge to, some of the base running we see is most of the video we get is from behind home plate or from a dugout. And so by the time they're touching first base, they're 120 feet away from whatever video we're getting, and they're very small. It's very tough to see what an angle or the running style looks like. The thing we can really get from that, I think most coaches that are paying attention to running are getting their home to first times. And, even if it's, on a double, if you got a left-handed hitter that runs a 4.3 on a double, that's going to get your attention. That's pretty quick. 4.4 for a righty, it's going to be pretty quick. Anything better than that's going to be, probably elite. So I think we're trying to get times with that. But if a kid were making home base running videos, which I think is rare, but if you were, I'd probably want to see it face on.
Yeah, I think parents need to. A lot of times they're focused on where does the ball go, but from what it sounds like, it would be better if they kind of stuck with the kids so you can get times on home to second or things like that with a game video maybe.
Yeah.
That's true, huh? I got something right about. I'm the slowest flat foot. Like this is not my thing. This is worse than talking pitching for me. Base running is let me just stand there and hope the guy hits it in the gap so I can make it to second. All right, last thing before we go. Base running is there's all sorts of trick plays. I've said it before for people who watch any of my stuff. Like the thing that drives me crazy about watching high school baseball is the first and third and the leave early and the dive back and roll to the outfield. And I mean, then you got the guys who are willing to go all the way and cheat and do bunt and run, cut third base before they, like, are you into any of these things at the college level or they just simply don't work?
I think they work. And I think the University of Florida ran the play a year or two ago where the base runner at first base starts to take off and then falls down intentionally and is kind of scrambling on the ground, and the pitcher, loses his attention on the runner at third base. Now this guy's scoring from third because kid at first base is crawling on the ground. I remember a play in basketball in high school where they would send a kid outside of one door in the gymnasium, and he'd go around on the other side. They'd swing it around the outside, and now he's popping three from the corner. Or somebody get down on all fours and bark like a dog. You don't see very much of that at the college level. I think a lot of it's because coaches are trying to run things that they can practice a lot, or that aren't going to piss their fellow coaches off with somebody being mad about something that they might deem as classless or lacking integrity. But
what about the bogey in the outfield one, where the guy's able to like take his lead from first in the grass practically in right field?
Yeah.
Right? Because the rule is as long as you're going straight to the bag, then that's the baseline, right?
Yeah, I've heard of that one. We don't practice that, but we just try and keep things, very simple and be really good at simple things. But there's some programs, some schools out there that have several trick plays. I can think of a junior college in Tennessee that has more trick plays up their sleeve than any other college I've ever watched in the country, and they're really good at it. So it's, I think it's just your style and your brand and getting your kids to buy into who you are and who you want to be. And if you're confident and aggressive in it, then more power to you.
All right, we're giving you we're social media world's giving you a challenge. We want to see next year Miami of Ohio or Miami University run the bogey in the outfield play, okay? And send it over to me just one time. That's what we want. Coach Dedman, thank you so much for joining us today and talking about this. And I think we got some brand new content in there, so I love it. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Josh, thank you for inviting me on. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.